What's up everybody? Welcome back to Rasco Garage. Today we have a totally different style of video coming to you today. Today I've been tasked with flushing out my tankless water heater. This particular one is a Rinnai, which is a popular brand, so some of you out there may have one of these, and you're supposed to flush them out annually. So we're going to go through that process. And I also have a scale cutter, which is like a descaling, because around in our area we have hard water. So if some of you folks have a tankless water heater along with the scale cutter filtration attachment, we're going to go ahead and service both of these things today. So without further ado, let's get into this thing. Alright, so for this procedure, you're going to need a couple things, and I apologize, my voice, I'm getting over a cold, so bear with me. So materials and tools that you're going to need to complete this job. You will need a couple of things. So the main piece of equipment here is a pump. I have a 1/10 horsepower. I got this to help me drain my hot tub. I got this off Amazon, I want to say for like 40 bucks maybe, something like that. So you will need to invest in the pump, because you have to have a pump in order to flush the water heater. We'll get into that a little bit later of what role this thing plays, but this is a mandatory piece. You need yourself a set of pliers, screwdriver or drill with the Phillips attachment. You're gonna need a step ladder or a regular ladder, because we got to get all the way up to the top. We got to pop the faceplate off. I have the replacement filter for the scale cutter portion of it. We're going to do that first, and then you're going to need a bucket, preferably 5-gallon. Hoses, I actually had these laying around from an old washer. These hoses are actually perfect, so you can get those from any home improvement store. And then last but not least, you're going to need 4 gallons of food grade white vinegar. Alright, so we're going to tackle the scale cutter, replacing this filter first. So get yourself a bucket, because this thing does have water in it, and we're actually going to unscrew this piece itself. It actually comes off of this. So what we're going to want to do first, this is the water from the outside of the house to the inside, so close that valve. And then this one is connected to the cold water, so we want to close that valve as well. Alright, now that the valves are closed, what we're going to want to do as well is unplug your water heater from the wall, because we got to allow a little bit of time for this thing, for the internals to cool off. We'll go into that in a second. But okay, so we close this valve, so now we only have water basically in this pipe, the length of this pipe, and we have water from right here. So it comes with this little wrench. So take the O-ring out, because the replacement filter, it does come with an O-ring in the package. So anything that has an O-ring on it, you're always going to want to replace the O-ring every time you service it. So you can see on this one, it's got some crap on there that we don't want. Alright, and this is why we have a bucket, because we're literally draining the water out of this tube here. Okay, so I was going to go out front and rinse this out with a hose, but my wife, who was filming this, told me to go inside and use hot water and hand soap, or dish soap rather, so we're going to go do that.
And so a cocoa.
Joke's on us. There's no water to the house. Okay, so my wife wanted me to go inside and clean it with hot water, but we literally have the water to the house turned off because we're changing this thing. So anyways, I just put some dish soap in there, and you can see now, like, it was pretty grimy in a previous clip, so now everything's nice and clean. So now take your O-ring And there's actually a little slot right in here, if you could see it, a little shelf.
Hold on. Stick it up more.
See a little lip in there? So your O-ring sits right in there. You don't do anything special. Just put it in there with your hands. Make sure you go all the way around with your fingers and that it's seated nicely, because this is what's going to prevent it from having any leaks. It's not under a lot of pressure, but enough pressure to where water will get around that and eventually leak. There's a little seat on the bottom here, and there's a seat inside, and this literally just drops in, just like that.
I'm filming.
Okay, so one thing to note, there's a receiver in here that you have to line up the filter with.
See how it was part of the old water.
Yep. So there you go. Scale cutter is a relatively easy job. A little bit of water on the wall, perhaps, a little bit of water on your leg. Nothing that you can't survive. Now we're moving on to the Rinnai tankless water heater. We're going to flush it, but we're going to service the entire thing. So the manual, of which I am referring to for all of these things, not just willy-nilly winging it. I read the manual. All the maintenance care is in there. So we need to take the faceplate off, and we get some compressed air, and we're going to clean out all the dust and things that's in there to make sure that stays nice and clean. So these side brackets need to come off because there's 4 screws, and these are just held in by 3 clips that you pull outward. One up top, one in the middle, one on the bottom. See the 3 clips? So these just pull right off there. Okay. Faceplate comes right off. So if you look in here, I mean, we got like cobwebs, dust everywhere. So we're just gonna spray out. We want to clean off the heating mechanism and like the top. This is what the manual says. I have a compressor, so I have air. But if you don't have a compressor at your house, not everybody has one. You can get some of that compressed air, like at Staples or whatever, to clean off like your keyboards and stuff. That'll be more than enough to clean out in here. Alright, so let's get the faceplate back on. There we go. Okay, when you're putting the screws back in, start them just with your hands, not the drill. That'll prevent you from putting them in sideways and stripping out these screws. You don't Yeah?
Yeah.
Alright. So now we're gonna do our flushing procedure. So this is where we're gonna need our pump, right? So this is our intake, right? You got to understand where the intake and the outlet are, because the outlet hose is going to go into the cold service plug. Come closer. So these are the service ports to flush the system. So we've already turned off the cold valve when we did the scale cutter. So now we're going to turn off the hot valve. Grab your pliers because these are on there pretty tight. Okay. You just put it in the horizontal position. So when it's going perpendicular to the pipe, that means that valve is closed. So now we have no water coming in to the system itself. We have now isolated it from the main line, right? So this is going to be our inlet. It's going to go into the water heater itself. This is going to be our outlet into our bucket, which will be pumped back and circulated through the system. Okay, and I just have hoses from a washing machine that I had lying around. These are a great option. I think they're pretty affordable as well.
Okay.
All right, so then we're going to take our return line that's on the cold. We're going to connect that to our pump output line. Okay, so the next step is the manual says it needs 4 gallons of vinegar to circulate through the system. So let's get this bucket filled up with 4 gallons of vinegar.
Enzo. Hi.
The last step, come on in. These are the service valves. So these valves allow these service valves to open and close. So right now they're in the closed position. So we want to open these things up. Okay, just take your pliers, open them up. Okay, so now it's the moment of truth. We're going to plug the pump in. See how this thing goes. So we got the vinegar, food grade, 4 gallons. We have the return line coming out of the hot service valve. We have the feed hose for the pump in here to cycle the vinegar through the pump, back into cold, through the system. This will descale and flush the water heater. So here we go. Got a leak. You have to let this go for 1 hour. So we're gonna let this thing go for an hour. We'll come check back in after that, and we'll go to the next final step. Okay, that's been an hour, so we gotta unplug it. All right, the system has been flushed. But you can see the water. I mean, definitely cleaned it out. So now the last step is we're going to have to close this service valve on the cold end side. We're gonna leave the hose service valve open on the hot. And basically what we need to do now is we need to, I'm gonna see if I can get my garden hose to connect to this end. And we're gonna have to run the cold water through the system to make sure we flush out all the vinegar. For 5 minutes we'll have to run it. So I'm gonna go grab the hose, we'll get that hooked up, and we'll come back through and we'll run this thing for 5 minutes.
We have a like, why don't you just dump it out?
Okay, so that's been 5 minutes. Now we need to close the valve once again. Now we can go ahead, close the service valve here on the hot side, and you can see here it indicates what direction is open or closed, off or on. So we want to turn it off. You don't have to force it, it'll stop on its own. Okay. Now we can take this thing off. Take off the inline filter, and I think it screws in. which it looks like it is. We'll turn on the cold, then we'll turn on the hot. Should be good to go. Okay, and then plug it back in. Well, that's it for changing the scale cutter on our tankless water heater and flushing out this Rinnai tankless water heater. All in all, it was about an hour and a half worth of time spent to do both procedures here. So this is something you can easily tackle at home. You do need a couple pieces of equipment to get the job done. However, they're relatively inexpensive and easy to obtain. This is an annual job, so doing it yourself, hour and a half, knocked it out really quick on a weekday after work, done deal. So you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe if you like the content. If you have any questions, drop me a comment below. See you next time, Rasco Garage.